Okay, so uh, most times when I'm speaking to someone about their play, I don't have this urge to say this to them, but in your case, I must. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your Lochlan is no longer with us, and this is the foundation of this really fascinating piece. As I'm reading all the material on it, I'm like, there's method to the madness. Um, Tell me about Lochlan. Tell me about this play. Why did you take this work and say, no, it cannot end? Let's continue.
Sure, I can start with that. So Locke and I went to high school together. Sylvia unfortunately didn't have the pleasure of meeting Lachlan in person, but has kind of been able to get to know Lachlan through the work and through meeting Lachlan's family and friends and whole community. But Lachlan and I were friends in high school. We went to this school called Interlochen up in Michigan, where we both were studying theater, and really just had a lot of the sort of same ideals and concepts about what we thought theater was needing right now. And a lot of what that is, we would talk about and theorize about and sort of play with as we were putting together shows. And so much of that has become the foundation for our company, LibLab, and this show in particular. So giving you a little bit of the history, Locke and I met in 2019. We were good friends for a number of years and began very earnestly writing together and sort of cracking these ideas about larger what can theater become in modern moment with technology the way that it is, and interactivity being such a vital thing, especially moving out of the pandemic. That in-person component was something we talked so much about. Of theater is live, theater's in person. So how do we get an audience to feel that interpersonal connection more than just seeing it, but really engaged with it? And so those ideas were fueling us to write a number of short plays that we were working on. And around that same time, Lachlan had just gotten a terminal cancer diagnosis, and had to put school on pause and go home and um, go through treatments and stuff. And that was for going on for about 2 years, and Lachlan was really actually quite on the mend. Most of us thought that Lachlan was looking pretty good. And then in the summer of 2023, it took a really sharp turn in June, and then unfortunately by August, Lachlan passed away, um, which is hard, and it's something that we live with every day. But really, both through doing this piece and working with LibLab as a whole, it's allowed me to have a continued conversation with Lachlan at all times about the things we're doing, thinking about what Lachlan would feel and think about the things we're doing and who we're bringing in, and all that kind of stuff. And so that led to this show where basically last year, about around the same time last year, we staged a selection of those short plays that Lachlan and I were writing. Um, one night, one day only performance. And it was a whole family affair. Lachlan's whole family was involved. There were friends from all of the different phases of Lachlan's life involved. And I was directing that alongside my good friend and collaborator, Zoe Williams. Um, and we brought Sylvia in because we had this text, which at the time was a lot shorter and slightly different in terms of context of the show, but was ultimately this thing that required a tremendous amount of improvisational skill, interactivity with the audience, talking to them and then jumping back into character and that sort of thing, and a ability to talk about death without us getting sort of bogged down into that pit that I think sometimes can happen when we're talking about death, of, which is natural and makes perfect sense, that immediate response. But really being able to like say, let's be honest about it, let's talk about it. And Sylvia can continue from there talking about our development of the show. um yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the show is unique because it is so joyful, Like it's all about death, but it finds the joy in life and in connection as it discusses the themes of death. And I think one reason that I was also brought on was the show was initially slightly different. The original script that Lochlan had written and then wasn't able to finish before they died was called "I'm Going to Kill Myself at the End of This," and that is a much different. The title, I think, portrays a slightly different image than what the show was about, because it heavily dealt with themes of suicide, but what it was really about, at least through my perception, was finding autonomy in death and being able to take some control over how you die. And so for someone who is facing a terminal cancer diagnosis, that's going to be on your mind as you look towards the end of your life. How can you go out the way you want to go? And I do have quite a lot of experience in improv, but I also have experience with suicide and suicide prevention. My mom died of suicide when I was very young, and so I
Oh,
spent a lot of my years growing up discussing that and trying to find ways to communicate about this very taboo subject, because I think that one of the big things that kind of contributes to rising suicide rates is this fear of discussing it. So with this title, it needed to be handled carefully because it's a very triggering and scary topic. So it needed to be handled with, some delicacy, but also honesty. And it needed to be, I think it needs to be talked about directly as well. That's not the kind of thing that you can really tiptoe around. So that's one of the main reasons I think I was brought on to the project, was I was able to provide a unique perspective there. And talking about death is something I've been doing my whole life. So I have really enjoyed being able to do that in this setting, in a way that I get to, connect with the audience and connect with collaborators. It's a really wonderful way to experience that.
I ask you both this, and I'm asking this from personal experience. Many years ago, I had a production that was running several weeks, and in between one week and the other, one of the actors was hit by a truck and died, and his understudy had to go on that following weekend. And I remember that first performance when the understudy entered. Now, this was a raucous comedy, and he was doing falls and all of that. Yet on stage and the audience was like, oh, that's the understudy. Because how did you, with this project, because Sylvia, you're unfortunately you're knowledgeable in this, and both of you had to deal with the loss of your partner here. Um, how did you get the audience to laugh, to enjoy this? How did you say, okay, it's about this, but look at this? What'd you do? What had to happen?
think it was about playing it honestly, and saying, yes, let's laugh, but let's also cry. It is both. Life is both, death is both, and the play is both. And what the play offers, especially in its sort of revitalized form, but even then, is that this person who is seeking autonomy, who is seeking control over their own death, isn't just doing it out of that fear, or that yeah, I don't know, fear, that fear of dying, but is also doing it because they want to go out on their own terms. And that's not to make it a big glorious thing, but to make it something fun, to end their life in a fun, enjoyable way, because that's the type of person that they are, right? And so that we're following in the show. And so even though it is a character that, as and we can talk about more as we go along, but as we sort of see, they get reshaped every show by the audience and through that interactivity. One thing that is definitely consistent about them throughout is this desire to make the entire thing an enjoyable experience for everybody. We more actively put that into the script in the later version, because with the whole cupcake motif, they're throwing a party for themselves. But even in that earlier version, um, there was still that energy of, I brought you all here to see me do this thing that is quite dark, to experience this death, and I'm making you an accomplice in it by watching me, but that's for fun. And that's something that I brought you here not just to pity me or to feel sad about my loss, but to recognize me and find the joy and the bliss that is seeing another human being going out on their own terms, right? So that's some of it. But Sylvia, you act it. Why don't you? Yeah.
Well, I think that the play asks the audience to bring the joy almost immediately. I think like the minute that the figure emerges, they are quite directly asking the audience to laugh with them. So, you kind of give the audience permission to laugh, to participate, to yell out anything that crosses their mind. Um, and so that like moment of permission in the beginning of the show is, I think, a really crucial part. Because you see that with theater, if there's someone who has a really loud and boisterous laugh, it gives the rest of the audience permission to laugh loudly as well. And if no one really takes that first step, then you do a whole show, which can, it can be hysterical, but you've kind of set that precedent of the way the audience is meant to face it and meant to react to it. And I think it's really important that we give the audience permission to feel all of the feelings, because I think all of the feelings are a part of grief. Like people talk about the 5 stages of grief, but I think, at least in my experience, there are the moments where you're sobbing, but there's the moments where you're sitting together and laughing hysterically, telling these funny stories about all the things you loved about this person that you've lost. And so there is so much joy and connection in grief. And obviously it sucks. It's the worst. It's not fun. But you can find, and I think most people do find, moments of joy within their grief, as well as anger and sadness and discomfort. I think joy is a huge part of it, because the reason that we're grieving is because we lost something that brought us joy. So incorporating laughter and humor into a show about grief is, in my opinion, essential.
Do you think it's the theater notion that does it? When you say to someone, so and so died, oh, that's terrible. When you're sitting in an audience and they say it on there, there's a suspension of disbelief. Are you subtly hypnotizing the audience to say, we're going to give you this powerful message, but it's a play? Like Shakespeare always does plays within a play to get his message
Mhm.
across. Are you basically saying to them, that's okay, it's a play, so you can laugh at the play, and the message will then seep in that way? It's the spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that element. I mean, I walk on stage and I say, I'm going to die tonight. And you think, well, no, you have a show tomorrow, so you're not. But um, I do think that it makes the audience feel a little safer, you know, because that is the beauty of theater, is being able to experience this wide range of emotion from the safety of a story that is not actively happening in real life to real people right now in front of you. So I think it's a great medium for this topic,
I
because
So
also
that.
think
what is the story itself? Is it this person is throwing a party for themselves because time is short? What's the story?
yeah, so essentially we are introduced to this person who at the very beginning seems a bit unwell, but they're putting together in complete silence this party for themselves. It appears they've brought out balloons, they've brought out party hats and party horns and all this stuff, and then they reach out for a bottle of pills that is maybe medicine, is maybe something else. We're not quite sure. When they collapse, and when they come back to, they're exactly where they were now, with a tray of cupcakes that they didn't have before, that wasn't there before, and they just immediately sort of are like, all right, welcome everybody, thanks for coming to my party. I am going to die. That was maybe practice, but here we are. And they sort of begin letting us into this experience where they explain themselves as um, being on the verge of death, on their way to that. They know this. How they know this and what the cause is, we don't know. Maybe not super relevant, but They know they're going to die, and they want to throw this party, this death day party, for themselves, just as one would a birthday party to honor their time, just like a birthday party does. But as they begin to introduce themselves, they very quickly realize that they don't remember who they are, and they don't remember their name. They don't remember what they did for a living. They don't really remember much. And so they're like, this is going to be really hard to throw a party honoring my whole life if I don't know anything about it. And so by working with the audience, they piece things back together, and figure out who they are.
Really interesting, because you're taking this now from a surrealistic point of view. The fact that the actor on stage faints and comes back, and where there was once what we can gather as the suicide pills are now cupcakes. Is there some sort of surrealistic thing? Are you leading us down several paths? Did this person die already, and now this is the entrance toward? Is this a hallucination? Was the cupcakes there all along? You're giving us all of these interesting things in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Feb and I both have our takes on it, but that is also for the audience to interpret. You know, it is what happened and what's happening, um, from the point of view of a party goer.
Especially because to that point, we hear the phrase all the time, life is what you make of it. And I think this show offers that so is death. Death is also what you make of it. Um, you can sort of choose to walk into that with a tremendous amount of fear and trepidation of not wanting to acknowledge it, or you can accept it and acknowledge it and understand that it is a part of your process through existence.
And how can we control death? Because obviously we can't stop it. We are all going to die. But can we find ways to make our death our own, to give ourselves some control by the way that we go into death, that we walk towards death or accept it or don't?
Pardon me if this sounds like a very grim question. Your own concepts of death, both of you and your company, etc. The loss of Lochlan, how did that change your concepts? We all, death is death is death. We since we're babies, we get it. We're going to cease to exist at some point. How did this change your personal philosophies on the topic?
I think for me, it just made me apply a lot of the ideas I'd had about death and existence beyond death, um, like to my own life and in my own communication with Lochlan. I've had my own philosophies that I've built up through my adolescence about death and if there is life beyond death, what that looks like. Which to me, um, I don't necessarily believe in a very I don't want to use the word rigid, but the traditional sense of what the afterlife might look like. Um, but I do believe that um, that energy that we experience when we're in communication with each other, when we are in space with each other, if energy can't be created or destroyed in exactly that way, it has to go somewhere. And so I do believe that we exist in some fashion. But I've had that idea for a long time, but I've never really actively thought about what does communing with someone who's gone mean. I'll say that our managing producer, who is Lochlan's mother, Brooke, has gotten very into mediumship, and she speaks with a medium on a pretty regular basis. Um, and she even helped me speak with a medium last summer, and so I had that experience as well. Um, and so I think, speaking for myself, there are many different interpretations of what and philosophies about what happens beyond death. But regardless of any of the specifics of it, for me, what it's really opened up is this idea that um, one's own openness to that spiritual plane, if you want to call it that, um, is kind of the key. And it's like it's not about it's not about picking a specific thing per se to believe in, but just being open to what the people who we've lost are still able to offer us, both in terms of memories that we have of them and signs, if you want to call it signs, angel numbers, things like that. All of that is just different things that play into the same idea, which is that they're still around and they're still looking out for you, and or you're connected. You can't sever that connection, you know.
Sylvia, you've unfortunately had to deal with this on a few occasions now. Um, how has all of this in your life changed or enhanced or whatever your feelings on passing?
Well, I think that I was confronted with death before a lot of my friends,
Right.
my classmates, and so my thoughts on it have changed a lot over time. I think they're ever evolving. Um, but the thing that has opened my eyes, that I think that I've become more aware of through my experience with death is just the power of community. And I've seen this through multiple different people's passing. I mean, my village expanded exponentially when my mom died. And the amount of people who came into my life and lifted me up and became part of my family because of that was shocking. And I feel that love to this day. I mean, gosh, um, almost like 18 years later. I'm still feeling the the support from the people who stepped in um, when I was 5 years old. But I've also felt it. I never got to know Lochlan, um, which I'm really bummed about because every person who I've met from Lochlan's community is awesome, which makes me think that this must have been a remarkable person to just create such a loving, joyous um, group of people. But I have been welcomed into this community through Lochlan's passing, which is a really unique experience as well, to get to go and join these people in their grief for someone who I didn't know, but I feel I have a connection with um, to some extent, and get to be a part of this growing community of people who are connecting through their love of Lochlan.
That's great.
And that was Lachlan's superpower, I'll also say, was community. We often talk about still Lachlan having this very incredible ability to see people and be able to make the connection of who goes who works well with each other, not just like working, but like as humans and as friends, and would make these wonderful connections. And it really feels like it's still happening all the time, um, even though Lockie's not here to physically do it himself.
Yeah.
You both have brought something up, and February, you hit it really hard just now with that last line. Um, Speaking, and I'll say spiritually, we don't say religious, we say spiritually. During the rehearsals, during the workshopping, even now, as you're ready to perform it, um, are there little moments where something happens, where something occurs, and you sit there and go, "How did that?" Thanks, Locke.
Oh yeah. Oh
Moment
yeah.
where you think, right there, Lachlan's right there.
Yeah, I both in terms of things going really well and things that get messed up, because Lachlan loved to mess around. Yeah, we we did the show a couple of months back. Sort of it was our preview that we were call was what we were calling it. Um, in and it was also our final workshop at Ithaca College, where Sylvia and I just graduated. And there is this moment, as I mentioned, where a collapse occurs, and then when the lights come back up, the Sylvia or the figure is back in the same spot they were, but now holding this tray of cupcakes. And that was not something we had previously planned or scripted, but instead was an accident that occurred because the lights came on earlier than they were supposed to. And it wound up kind of becoming the I feel like that finally was the last thing that unlocked the show and helped us figure out like the missing piece. Um, and I totally think it was Lochlan because I'll admit I was running the lights. I'm the one who pressed the button too early, but I think Lochlan was moving through me a little bit and was like, now this is what needs to happen. And just
You
kind of
were
gave
running
it
the
the
lights, but it wasn't your hand on the light.
correct. Um, yeah, it was a pretty magical thing how that accident became not so much an accident, but a very crucial thing we'd been missing.
That's very cool. That's very cool. All right, my last question, and I call this: Are you a genius by accident or on purpose? Uh, you are supplying with this little. I gather it's a one act. I gather there's no intermission or anything. It's just this
Correct.
self-contained one person. Here it is show. You are supplying us with the ultimate catharsis. And it's not like, okay, these people want to hear it, these people don't. No, you're giving us the catharsis that everyone in the world yearns to feel. The notion of accepting death, of celebrating life, of all the positivity that comes with something that shouldn't be positive. Um, as you were writing this, as you were creating this, as you were molding it, was that in your brain, or did you just suddenly look at a run through and say, you know what we just did?
It was something I thought about, I think for sure, at least in terms of the universality, because it's that is a theme that we really talk about in the show, and like the whole, I mean, a big part of why I think the whole idea of recreating the character every night works so well for the show is because it shows it could be anybody. Anybody can be this person. And we're going to create that person together because they're going to be literally made from pieces of all of us, right? All of us are going to, in the audience, are going to give a little bit to make this person, right? And so, in that way, I was like, this is a very universal show, which was also a good feeling because, you know, as much as I appreciate very specific stories, because very specific stories are also needed, it's exciting to be working on something that I feel like anyone can really appreciate and apply to their own life. Um, but certainly, I was considerate of that, Sly.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think Lachlan was the one who came up with this very initial concept of like birthing a character who dies at the end of the show. Um, but the really unique thing about the way that this happened, is that Lachlan was writing this show as they were dying, and Feb was writing this show as they were grieving. So this beautiful and terrible coincidence created a story that is written by people looking at death from both sides, from the process of dying and the process of grieving. You kind of get this very universal perspective on death, which I think is so unique and so powerful. And that has been, I think, a really big contribution of February's, is that element of grief into the show, as well as just the birth and the death. There's that element of grief as well.
And fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately for the audience, but unfortunately for all of you, it's authentic. You're not writing a story. You're typing out your emotions.
Yeah.
All right, tell us where the show is, when the show is, et cetera, et cetera.
It will be at Yellow Bicycle Theater from September 18th through the 21st as part of the Philly Fringe Festival. We are at 9 p.m. on the 18th through 20th, and then at 5 p.m. on the 21st if you are looking for that Sunday matinee.
Excellent, excellent. And tickets, they can go to phillyfringe.org.
Yes.
We
phillyfringe.org.
also,
Tickets.
and you can check out liblabproductions.com or LibLab Productions on Instagram, and there are links to tickets through that as well. And you can follow our journey.
What's next for LibLab?
The immediate next thing after Philly is we have one more festival stop for this show in Oklahoma City as part of the Theater Crude Fringe Festival. And then through the rest of the year, we have our first ever New Works retreat that we're going to be doing in Evanston, Illinois at the end of October. So yeah, we'll hopefully be having some exciting things coming out of that and into the next year.
I'm always saddened when I say to someone, "What's next?" and they go, "I just want to relax for a little while."
We don't really do the relaxing thing.
I literally before this meeting was sitting down, plunking out my calendar of now through July 2026 of creative projects. So no, there's
Never.
slowing down. No slowing down. Don't do that.
No, we were workshopping this production as we were graduating from college.
That is true. And applying to do this show at various festivals.
Yeah.
My wife was part of her college's theater program, and she tells the story that literally she accepted her diploma and then she forgot to take off her mortarboard, and she went into tech for the next show, and the thing is flapping as she's going out to the lighting booth or something.
Awesome.
So I always admire those that say, "This was great, I enjoy it, and next."
Yeah. And I think this is definitely, Oklahoma City will not be the end of Lousy Cupcake. I think
No.
there's much more to come. We just gotta sit down and plan it.
Excellent. I wish you all the best with this. May this celebration of life continue to flourish, and may it open people's hearts and minds to this very tough topic, and may people walk away from it healed, for lack of a better term, healed from your production. Best of luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay.